Good morning. Nice to see you all again for another week. The meeting notes are up again. Had yourself some agenda/announcement items for today. We have the seminars tomorrow, correct, Lindsay?
Yes, at 2 p.m. Pacific.
That will be Craig Miller, correct? So looking forward to seeing you guys there. If you can make it, sure it'll be interesting. I haven't heard much. I haven't seen Craig in a little bit. It'd be good to see what he's been up to with SimPEG. So I have a few quick reports. Feel free to add yourselves in there as we're going along. So just testing cross gradient stuff a little bit some more. It seems to be performing like it should. It's doing its job. However, I think, like at least with what I've been playing around with, it still seems pretty robust to stuff. It's just that we will need to iterate on directives more to automate the process of doing the cross gradient inversion. But still haven't heard anything back from Shalong. I'm going to ping him about if he's had a chance to go to look at some of the revisions that I put on there and have him test it out on some of his stuff still. But it's doing its job. It's putting linear relationships in between parameters. Like if you brought them cross plot space, it looks like nice linear features in the scatter plots, which is what it's supposed to end up with results. And then the models are spatially correlated, so it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Is it just it's doing a lot of operations inside the regularization itself rather than for the updates? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm saying, so right now the parameter, like the weighting parameter on the cross gradient is fixed in the inversions, which makes it a little bit difficult to do the minimization, to like cool into the right solution, cool into a good solution. And the way that the individual like regularization parameters are handled is not super robust. Like it works well enough, but it's kind of, you need to have more knobs to turn than it is supported right now, because it seems like you'll need to have like weighting parameters on. You'll have to control weighting parameters on the data misfit turns themselves. Like if you actually want to turn down a data misfit in an objective function, like you actually have to have a parameter on that if there's like 20 other regularization functions that you're working with. Other than that, I had a little bit of free time in the evening that I was playing around with. If you guys are looking at the new M1s, there is hope to run SimPEG well on it, because I wrote some wrappers for the Apple's sparse solvers that are included. So I was playing around with that, and I think I'll be able to make it work for most of the applications that we use SimPEG, considering that. So Apple only has solvers for sparse symmetric matrices. All of our matrices are symmetric, which is a good thing. So we can solve most of them. However, they only have real solvers. They don't have any complex solvers, but I can get around that as well. So if you're curious, we should be able to do something with the new M1s on. If you buy one of that, it should run decently well instead of having to slow it down. And so that's what I was up to the last week. Not other too much related to SimPEG stuff, just using a bunch of codes, playing around with some things. John, how's it going?
Yeah, busy with the parallelization stuff, but I just kind of more or less put that in there as a reminder that I have to add that code for the PyDiesel stuff, because I'll be using that here shortly. But yeah, just been working on a low-level parallelization. My bosses don't really want to use DAS. They want to just set up a simple TCP IP connection and do it all like really kind of reinvent the wheel, I find, but so I'm working on that, and yeah, almost got that done. And I've done it also for not forming J. I've got, so the workers hold the fields, and then you can request JVec and JTVec from the workers as well. So if the problems get too big, you should be able to, you could either have the option to form J as Dom has laid out, and or just use the same natural way. That's about all I've been working on.
What's the what's their concerns with that, John? Just curious.
They think that there's a whole bunch of overhead that's costing us, it's going to cost us a lot, and like in performance, but I don't know. It seems like I've now, like, they've had to have optimized like the connections and the talking, where now I'm just building that up, and it's, yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's something that they just don't, they just want something simple, I guess, but it's actually not as simple. It's a lot of code, but anyways, yeah,
Are they wanting you to use like MPI only, or
not even MPI? Like I've have like, we have the DAS solution, I have an MPI solution, and now I've got this low level solution. Yeah, it's
Wow.
all there.
I'm
there a time?
surprised they care. Like, yeah, I'm a bit surprised they care about which solution that you would use. I thought what they care is actually the speed up and the good result.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's I've been instructed otherwise. So yeah, I've been working on it that way, and it gives a little bit of freedom. Like now I've got like worker code that sits on a node, and yeah, it handles all the simulation, or the sub simulation and decoupled mesh. Yeah, almost there, getting it working. But yeah, the MPI solutions, you have to have it so that the data loads, you can't pass everything over MPI. MPI has a limit, and it's pretty low for what it'll communicate and pass over the sockets. Yeah, it complained to me a lot, so that's why I didn't really pursue that one much further. But I could implement it now with the lower level one, where we're not, like, I'm just talking to a database and I pull the data, the node just pulls its data that it needs and starts a simulation. But yeah, I'm hopefully be able to give a talk on this. Maybe it'll be January or hopefully December. We'll see where I get here at the end of the month.
okay? Well, I see me and John added on there. So Devin, I was talking to him yesterday, and we're wanting to talk about instantiating classes a little bit when we're moving to this new, when we're removing the properties branch, or the properties in there. So when I'm usually programming, when I like to design things, my general philosophy is like, I'd like to, when I create a class, I'd like for it to be valid when it's created. Like that is something that makes sense to me. Like I want to be able to create an object and use anything that I can do. I can certainly change options later, but I want to be able to at least use it right away if I wanted to. So if you think about it, when I'm programming, when I'm writing things, I don't like to create an object and then also add on like the locations later, or add on the solver later. Like that part doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because it's like, then you can't use the object that you just created without knowing that you had to put other stuff into it. It can lead to sort of opaque stuff. So when we're moving to properties, that will likely be the case for most of the stuff that we've created. That's the case now for essentially everything except a tree mesh, but that's a special case, right? If the tree mesh in discretize, like unless you start refining it, it's not going to be a valid thing. So it's the only thing in discretize that is not like valid as soon as you initialize it. So it will take a little bit of change in some code by some people, how they're using it now, because some of our, we've gotten away from it most of the time. Most of the things are passed as keyword arguments into the functions or into the classes now. as we're looking at it. And most of our examples are written that way, but there's still an odd way that you could use the code. So with that in mind, there's I wanted to talk a little bit about the initialization of some classes. So when we're initializing them, I like to have like all the keyword arguments. I would like to have like the keyword arguments there listed as well as their default arguments in the initialization script, like in that init call. That makes sense to me because you can look at that and see right away what the defaults are without knowing that, oh, this class has, I can set these other options and that's what those defaults are later. The other way that you can do it is just have it accept like just any keyword arguments, like you can do the ** keyword args, and then just have like a set number of default parameters to it that are automatically assigned, or they're just automatically that when it's initialized. In my opinion, I feel like that's a little bit less clear from looking at the initial, like using inspections, things like that on the functions to see what's actually getting set. But that's my opinion. So I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit to that and at least give Devin some a direction on which way to go with them. My guess, like I said, my preference. So if you guys have any other thoughts on which way to go, or if you have more questions and you're unsure what I'm talking about at all, I can explain it a little bit more.
I think the kind of pretending to be a dev, the counter argument of that, I guess, what keyword arguments our user would use, I guess. There are lots of keyword arguments, not necessarily even touched upon by most of maybe 95% of the user, and only 5% of the user use lots of those keyword arguments. I think probably what Devin would say, oh, we're just going to use the list out whatever the default one, and then let other things on the keyword arguments. I guess that's what Devin said. I kind of like your approach, Joe. I like listing all of them, and at least I can see. I'm not a big fan of those keyword args, but I think that there is a sort of the value. So I'm not sure what's the best way.
I mean, there's certainly times when the keyword args keyword arg catch-all thing makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it does. Just
how about this? Because we got multiple level of classes that we're inheriting. Let's say the base class would list out all of those parameters, but some of the subclass which inheriting the upper class wouldn't kind of implicitly list those things. It's pretty hard to know what are those keyword argument was in some sort of subclass. For example, we got base EM class, but we got FDEM class, which doesn't really list those kind of things. That seems a bit more like a problem to me, because I think at least let's say we got set of a parameter that we decided to let the user know, but then how we can somehow let the user know in even the subclass. Which
right. I understand. It's okay, how does it make it more transparent what the options are from the parent classes?
Correct.
I mean, you can always repeat when you're setting all the self dot, the attributes in the sub modules, you can always repeat everything that comes from the parent class. Something we've done with GeoApps, so that like you said, when you want to introspect, it's nice when you're in a subclass to be able to get all the list of valid parameters at least.
Right.
Is there a place, Joe, where you think would be a good place to test this out? As EM is, I think, a bit of a complicated place to start that, but maybe just because there's a few layers of classes, but if you tried, I don't know, maybe potential fields,
That's
just
what
like to see what it kind of looks like and if the number of keyword arguments seems kind of interactable or if it seems okay.
Yeah, I think that he was working on potential fields, so we can look at that and I'll tell him, like, let's look at it a few different ways, see what it looks like, and then we'll make a decision on which way to stick with. So there'll be one way where we just, obviously it's just keyword args for everything and it gets passed on through. Another way would be, okay, this is only the new options from each subclass are present, then the rest are keyword args that are passed on through. And then the third way would be listing everything every time.
Generally, I think it's a great suggestion, Joe, because I think I said before, I find it hard at times to read into SimPEG, and one reason is this, that you almost have to know how to instantiate the class, but then also what to do afterwards to use it properly. But also to Sogi's point, I guess it's a bit like in what is it, the pyplot.plot. If there is a class which has a huge amount, then probably a combination makes sense. Like the keywords that are used by 90% should be spelled out, and then are quarks for all the other things. And yeah, for the more advanced things. But spelling out more, I think it is a great way also to help new users to find the info that is needed.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll look at that. We'll make a decision on that, kind of how it looks compared to each other. So,
That's cool.
okay.
The only thing, Joe, that I'm not a big fan of is that if it's the syntax, the amount of code we have to write to check if the keyword is in the keywords and then deal with it, right? The whole, like, if this key is in keywords, then do this, right? I hope that we can just get rid of all that and just handle all of this and in the keyword setters and the argument setters, basically.
Yeah,
so we don't need to do all those if
of
statements.
Yeah, all of the validation should be handled within, like, the getters and setters. I think most of the time that those weird pop off keyword arguments happens is when it's like we're trying to deal with a deprecated keyword argument.
Yeah, but then why don't we just, have a, because you already have a utils that deals with deprecations, right? Just like throw it in. Just have like one call for each of those deprecated article until we get rid of them, instead of creating a property just for that redundant, not that deprecated keyword. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
just do it on the spot and don't have this property still hanging around in the class. Like, if we don't want to get rid of it, right?
Mhm.
Just flip the name and then call the real setter for the new name. But yeah. In my experience, it's easier to do a parent-child class and passing stuff down if we don't use the keywords. It's kind of like nicer if if you have defaults, then do like a dunder before the init. All your defaults are there. It's like it's in the signature of the class, but that's like it's whatever people's preferences.
Yeah, like it certainly does make it easier to maintain and extend if we just kind of only implement whatever class has new options. Like they
only there. Yeah.
Only there. Like it's a lot
Yep.
easier to maintain and implement that way.
100%. Yeah.
It's something maybe we can take care of with the document, like the doc strings as well. It's like, okay, it is this option plus everything from this parent class or something like that.
Yeah, and then if you want to override the default of your parent class, then you just have to set the value there, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever.
Yeah, I know. I guess
enough chefs in the kitchen. Yeah, make a decision. That's why.
Okay, well, I'll make sure. Lindsay, see you on there next.
I wanted to bring up sort of a question for folks here and something else for all of us to think a bit about is with GeoSci and the GeoSci apps. So Doug dropped a comment in the GeoSci Slack, and I think Dieter, you encountered this as well, or a similar issue. We're running into the scikit-learn dependency issue with all of the apps. And hopefully that should be an easy fix, but I think it kind of raises the question, some of these repos we were relying on Travis, we should be moving over to GitHub Actions, and maybe thinking about, and I don't know how complicated this would be, but it is like, you know, we tried to create the GeoSci Labs repository to kind of be like our app warehouse, that like that's where we update stuff and then we can push it out elsewhere. I don't know if there's a way to automate some of that with GitHub Actions. It's something we can think about. I think that's maybe like, it's a second order concern. First, I think we need to get these things fixed and kind of get some testing in place so that we're alerted when things break and we don't get too far behind. But I think it shouldn't be too complicated to basically, if we push to main on the GeoSci Labs, to just push out whatever notebooks are relevant to the particular repos. So I don't know if anybody has experience with that or kind of thoughts on next steps there.
It should be pretty simple because it's kind of what happens with a few of the like documentation builds, right? Like it pushes it to either another repository or it pushes it to somewhere else. So it should be pretty easy to set up like that. We'll have to get a few tokens, but that's should be it. Just we're gonna have a script that would upload them and then for each of those subsequent repositories if they'd be updated.
Yeah, because I wrote that like little NB librarian library to just like grab whatever notebooks or to at least like keep track of a list of notebooks that we want. So I imagine it shouldn't be too complicated to do, but yeah, it's a bit challenging. So I think there's a few layers of issues that we encountered is EMGSI is still being deployed manually via Google App Engine. So it'd be great to get that over to GitHub Pages. So the first issue that was encountered there was the master main switches. All of our URLs were out of date because we hadn't deployed the website, even though we had fixed it in the repo. And then the second layer of issues is then that some of the dependencies were causing problems, and so the notebooks themselves weren't working even when you get to the right one. So there's kind of both of those issues that we need to fix. As I think the EMGSI one should hopefully be pretty straightforward to move that over to GitHub Pages. But the apps will take just a touch more thought as to how to kind of maintain our collections.
Fortunately, I mean, I know I pushed that 0.15.2 release, which contains the fix for that scikit-learn dependency. So hopefully that should help with those notebooks. But if they're running off of older versions of SimPEG or that 0.15.1 or 0.15.
Yeah, I do think that some might not be up for the new discretized new SimPEG even. Not entirely sure. I had to pin quite a few things to get some running, which I wanted to show to some students to show it. But in the end, there was scikit for sure, but there were others I can't even remember. And then I think, I'm not sure, but I think in the current stage, there wouldn't be an environment where all notebooks run, because there are some notebooks that need a newer EMGSI and others that need an older one, if that makes sense. So I think as an entity, it doesn't run. I don't know since when the test fails, but probably a year at least. When did Travis shut down? So yeah, things will have accumulated. Some of them probably have not been touched in 4 years since the disk.
I think, oh, go ahead, Joe.
Are all the labs, like the notebooks in the EMGeosci, based out of the GeoSci labs? brand?
Yes, but
We
it's been a
have
while.
working versions.
Sorry?
We have working versions of all the notebooks. They just need to be pushed to that repository.
I don't know. I'm not sure if we were to test. So the one that we should test is the GeoSci labs. If all the notebooks there work, then it should be relatively straightforward, as we just need to like update EM apps and update the GPG. But yes, I'm not sure because we have not had testing running on this for, oh no, maybe we do. You've got GitHub
GeoSci
Actions on
Labs,
there.
yeah, GeoSci Labs has GitHub testing on it and everything. So it's just, it hasn't been run since August 30th. So
Okay. Can we set up a cron on that so that it runs like?
yeah, I
monthly?
haven't done that with any of the GitHub actions yet, but it would be nice to just set up that. It's like action.
Okay. Well, maybe we can take a look at these and come up with a bit of a to-do list, because if the GeoSci apps or the GeoSci labs are working, then it should be very straightforward to get everything else up and running. But right now there's a few weak links in the chain, which makes it pretty frustrating for folks who want to get up and running.
So speaking of testing stuff, I got a few tests on, or a few of the tutorials on SimPEG to run much quicker. And I'm at like 20% of the time, 10% of the time they were taking a few of the long tests. So what's happening was the DC and IP tests or tutorials were all using the sensitivity weighting, like the update sensitivity weighting directive, but then they were being told not to store the sensitivity matrix. So they were essentially repeating a lot of work inside, because it's when you call to get the sensitivity weighting, it automatically stores the sensitivity matrix. So it was like doing that whole thing and then just not paying attention to it. So it was definitely slowing those scripts down a lot. So I got that testing. And then I can't remember, in the new MT stuff, is there options now to store the sensitivity matrix for frequency domain EM codes? Because that's not in there right now, correct?
It's still in the tiled
Yeah,
simulation.
That's on a tiled simulation, yeah.
Okay.
We should bring that one. We can piecemeal that one first.
Yeah, that would
if you
be-
need it.
It would be good to just bring in on its own, because that would also
Sure
get
thing.
some of those frequency domain tests running, or tutorials running a lot quicker as well. Because one of those I think takes like 20 minutes to run, and it's just doing a 2D inversion. But it does the 2D to 3D thing and then does a 2D inversion. But I imagine that would get sped up decently by just
Yeah, it's pretty like self-contained thing, right? Since everything is under desk, you should be able to just grab it and make sure that the it's still running, like the tests are still passing with it. But it's the same sensitivities, so you should.
Those tests should be passing. I'm pretty sure I checked those out. That actually, I was going to ask you, Dom, if I could, or if it's okay to bring in that pull request that you have for tile. I was going to say if I can pull it in and then we can start piecemealing it out and working on it. If that's okay. I saw Joe, you commented on that. Is it okay if I bring it in and then we'll work?
Which one? I didn't have a whole chance to look through that, Dom.
It's a tiled to tiled, right? It's basically the R4 tiled to SimPEG tiled, so it's not
okay.
bringing anything in. It's just a transfer over of changes. It's a good place to look at it if you want to look at it. But
Yeah, if so, if you can give me the go ahead, I'll bring it in and then we can start from there.
yeah, sounds good, man.
Because I should be done with the MT now, I think. We still have that first test, I think, Joe, but I'm not quite sure I understand what that one's looking for.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, speaking of MT, I might need your help, guys, because I can't get a good forward model with as soon as it's topography and the mesh, man, the MT is like all over the place. It's a bit annoying.
I can give, yeah, I've got, I did a project this summer with, in the mountains or in BC there. It's got some pretty good topo and it seemed to work okay. I can hand you the script if there's something there, I think.
Yeah, any tricks? Like, did you move your electrodes down? Did you?
No, we just, yeah, just drape them on the topography and everything seemed to go pretty well.
Like your receivers can be in the air. You don't need to do like a DC connect to active or anything.
No, well, no, I draped the active onto the, like, they're not in the air, they're like right on the surface there.
Surface. Okay.
Yeah, right on the surface, and yeah, seemed to work pretty well.
Is
Right.
there total field formulation at this point, or are we only ever still solving primary, secondary?
I'm using secondary.
Yeah.
Primary,
it's
secondary.
so.
I think the total field solution will be as soon as this boundary stuff works. We should get a total field solution to that, right?
All right. Well, I will try the surface, John, and then I'll ping you again if it doesn't pass.
Yeah, if it doesn't, I can share that script with you just so you can see how I set everything up. And
It
yeah.
seems like it's not required for the UBC codes. Like, you know, my coworker just left them like they were like half of them are in the air, half of them on the ground, and the Ford model still looks like reasonable. But for us, it's just everything is like boo boo, positive, negative, just go crazy.
Oh, weird.
John,
should-
what kind of a topography did you have? Reason I'm asking is that, Devon's doing, a number of cross checks between, the GIF codes as well as SimPEG. And, a topographic, there's lots of choices of topography, but maybe you have something that's kind of interesting and you could just use that as a test example.
Well, actually, if he just uses the L block, right? The L block that he's been benchmarking with, it works because everything is flat. But if he just puts like a, like a Gaussian topo, 100 meters topography over the area, you'll see it right away. The Ford model like looks like very, very noisy. So just tell Devon like add like a 100 hill, like 100-meter hill, like slow slope over the L block, and then use the same conductivity, just fill in with
Okay.
with ground, and then look at the Ford.
Was your topography, really extreme, John?
It wasn't like super extreme, but it was probably like a 200-meter variation over the whole grid, I'd say.
Okay. Gentle.
Yeah. Sharp in places, but mostly gentle. Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of topography doesn't seem to matter as much as is there topography, and as soon as we have like a block that sticks out, it seems to really tweak it off. But maybe it's me. I'll try to drape. We'll see.
Dom, have you the fields looks like odd? Is that what you're saying? Like the data looks odd? Like
The observed data is pretty smooth, right? So it's a line, all right? It's a line of MT, and then the fields are pretty smooth on all the components, like imaginary real. And if I do a Ford model of just a half space on flat topography, then my fields are also they look like they're pretty flat, obviously. But as soon as I put topo in it on the L block, right? So I know the answer of it. Yeah.
mhm. So the response looks odd. Is that what
It
you're
just
saying?
goes
That's-
positive, negative from two stations next to each other. It goes positive, negative, right? It really
Oh, I
jumps
see.
around. So it's obviously like numerical. It's not
Right,
shouldn't be
right.
real.
And your frequency is very low, or like 1 hertz? What's the frequency?
Well, on the L block, I use the same as the right? So it's 10, 50, and 200 or something like that. The real data set that I have is like down to like 1 hertz or something. It's pretty low frequency, but
Yeah,
I
that
don't know.
seems odd. Seems odd. In theory, like putting in the air shouldn't matter much, I guess.
Because the fields are smooth, right? They're continuous, right?
Yeah, as long as you measure the horizontal electric field, it's supposed to be continuous
Yeah.
along the boundary. So it shouldn't matter much.
Yeah.
As long, like if you're measuring the vertical electric field, that should matter. But yeah,
No,
so
it's impedance.
yeah, so it seems like a different problem than just locating your receiver.
Maybe the our tree mesh is too. I don't know. I'll keep digging.
Okay.
I'll guess that you know if I find anything.
Okay. Any other quick report stuff anyone wants to go over? Not, we'll see you guys.
No, I just put in the EM channel if anyone is interested in reviewing. I had to decline because I will be out all of December, but if someone is fancying, what is it, the regularization in version DC and CSAMT basically, give me a shout in geophysical prospecting. That's it. I said I can't, and then I got the reply, yeah, it's very hard to find people before Christmas. I said, yeah, I bet I'll ask around, I promise. So here we go.
No one's throwing their name at you, Will.
I was expecting everyone, me,
pick
but
me, pick
no. Sad. Next time.
I just did one review. I paid my dues. I'm good for the year.
Yeah, I just did it today.
There we go.
Yeah. I think that's part of the problem to find someone in December. Everybody said, no, this year I've done my share. I'm out.
Yeah.
January again. Resetting the clock. Bye.
Okay, well, we'll see you all tomorrow for the seminar. Take care.
See ya.
Yeah.
Yeah.